You're listening to Eat, Play, Sex with Dr. Kat, the place to up-level that sexy life of yours, with expert talk on sex, love, and nutrition.
Post Coital Dysphoria, sadness after sex. Are you familiar with that?
I don't know if I've heard it said in that way, but I'm definitely familiar with like the drop, so that could be like, I don't know. It is, you are having an infusion of like feel good hormones. And then afterwards there can be a drop. Sometimes that could just be like hormonal. It can be due to shame. It can be due to lots of things. And it sucks.
It does.
That's the clinical term. It sucks.
It sucks. Go get a diagnosis of that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how often, this is a pretty common experience actually. And from my research, it's the challenges of it is that we can see that and then believe that there's something wrong with us. So shame about the shame, or shame about the anxiety after the orgasm or after the sex, or why am I sad when my partner is such an amazing partner? Why am I feeling distant and sad and crying and after this experience? And I think this is important to have conversations about that. It is actually very common, and the importance of nesting or that aftercare to ground.
Yeah, but see, these are the things that people need to talk about in sex education is like, oh, it's normal for this to happen after, and to normalize that so that people aren't feeling bad about the feelings they're having. I think probably the most frustrating part of this depression and sex topic for me, and I had someone on my podcast recently to talk about it, is one of the main tools in our culture to manage depression is medication. And I am in support of medication. I think it can be really helpful and useful for a lot of folks. And a lot of the primary medications to help treat depression or major depressive disorder do affect our sexuality. And so it sucks because it's kind of like, okay, well, if you don't take medication, you're not going to want to fuck. But if you do take medication, you're also not going to want to fuck. So it's like, how do we choose what to do with that? And we can certainly talk more about that. But I think that's that's a really frustrating thing that a lot of my clients have experienced.
Yeah. And so which medications do you see having the most impact, and which ones do you see as having less of an impact?
So again, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not your medical doctor, but in general, things that fall into the category of SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So basically what that means is it's allowing more serotonin to be flowing through your body. And interestingly, serotonin, even if it's a feel-good feeling, it actually turns off some of our sexual drive, desire components. That's like the simplest way I can say it. So forgive me if I skipped a lot of steps, but that things in those categories, that's like your like Prozac. Let's see, what else would fall into that category? I'm blanking.
Alexa?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch that fall under the category of SSRIs. And so those are the main ones that are usually affecting people. So those can do things like making it so that you have less spontaneous desire and arousal, meaning like you might not even think of sex at all unless you're like really prompted with things that start to like arouse your body. It might take longer and more effort and energy to get to a place of being open to getting turned on. It can also dull the sensations in your body. So it can take longer to reach orgasm or to feel pleasure in your body. Even though maybe overall you're feeling like less shitty, it takes more to like get to the higher highs, I would say. So it can be a little muted for folks. And so this can obviously get people to be really frustrated, either solo or partnered. And it's definitely like not a death sentence. There's lots that you can do to work on this and to figure this out and to navigate this so that you can both take medication and have an enjoyable sex life. But it is going to take some work and some creativity.
Yeah. What are some of the things that you tend to prescribe people or give people as exercises to help them through?
If they're a client of mine, I'm definitely going to want them to like sign a release form so I can talk to their psychiatrist, because they may be able to prescribe them a different kind of medication that's not an SSRI. They may also be able to prescribe them something to kind of offset this effect. Often that's something like a medication called Wellbutrin. They may also, depending on how holistic this doctor is, they may suggest like different supplements and like holistic things that are more like medicinal practices to help kind of offset the sexual side effects. So I'm going to really want to like talk to the doctor and make sure that they are firstly talking to my client about sex, because unfortunately a lot of psychiatrists do not have any training in human sexuality. And so a lot of folks will go and maybe not know anything about this side effect and then be wondering what's going on. Or often it may be their partner wondering what's going on and taking it personally of like, why don't you want to have sex with me?
Yeah.
So ideally talking to that psychiatrist and making sure we can collaborate, making sure that they're talking to their client about this and willing to hear that their sexuality is important to them. Because I think a lot of doctors will just be like, well, you're not feeling depressed anymore. Like, get over it, basically. Like this is the trade-off, as opposed to working with them to try to find a solution. In terms of behavioral stuff, I would say one of the things I do with most clients is trying to get them to redefine what sex means to them, and not have it be so goal-oriented. So if we're just focused on the goal of orgasm and just defining sex as penetration, yes, medication might affect those things, but that doesn't mean that you can't have different kinds of sex or different kinds of pleasure and connection and intimacy. It just might look different than whatever pressure or expectation you're putting on yourself. So it's a lot of like re-narrating, what does sex mean to you? What is pleasure? How do you define that? What does it take for you? And then getting people to be curious. Like, yes, maybe it doesn't look the same, but at least for me, and I've been someone who has taken medication before, and I can't say that this will be for you medically, but I would say for me, like it just took learning different routes to pleasure and that I might require more in different things. And then it kind of like plateaued out. And I felt like the less I was worried about it not happening and being creative, the less of an issue it was. And then the more pleasure I ended up having. So I don't know if you know anything about this. I haven't done my research on this in a sciencey way, just anecdotally, but I do wonder if like, yeah, sure, medication can certainly affect these things, but I often feel like it's like the feelings about it happening that make it worse and make it maintained.
I would actually very much agree with you. And addressing some of those symptoms that you were saying, like more dulled sensation, everything, we can condition our body towards sensuality. And that's actually what I talk about a lot in my Sensual Awakening 14-day initiation
Sign up for the
course.
class.
Get it. But how important it is to it's almost like we fall into this. If it's not natural or if it doesn't happen automatically, then
there's something wrong.
Yeah, something's wrong, or just like, fuck, why would I put any energy into it? Same with relationships, right? It's not natural if it doesn't happen spontaneously, blah, blah, blah. But
yeah, people want a quick fix.
Right. But if we instead get intentional about it, put on our critical thinking hat and figure out how we can, address some of those symptoms, I think that can help us without having to completely whether it's communication or sex altogether.
Lovers, thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed the show, hit subscribe and head over to eatplaysex.com to connect with me and grab my sexy guides. Because my goal here is to get you to eat, play, and sex better so you can improve your sex life, which will improve every aspect of your life. Until next time, keep it sexy.